Anyway, President Trump signed several executive orders yesterday, including two related to pipeline deals in the Midwest, the Keystone XL, the Dakota Access Pipeline. Let's bring in Senator Heidi Heitkamp of North Dakota, the ranking Democrat on the Senate Banking Committee, who supports Trump's recent executive actions on the pipelines. And Senator Heitkamp, thank you for joining us. I hate to rehash ancient history, but you took the elevator, the beautiful gold elevators, up to that floor where and actually talked. I think he was the president at that point, and there was a possibility. Were you offered I didn't follow it that closely. Were you offered a position at that meeting, Senator?
I was extraordinarily grateful to have the opportunity to talk about priorities and issues with the president-elect.
Okay. I know that even though you're out in the Dakotas, I wouldn't want to be I wouldn't want to receive all the mail you would have gotten from certain parts of the Democratic Party, even for going there. I'm sure you got a lot of flack, right?
I did, but I was incredibly honored to be asked, and it gave me an opportunity to talk about things like the pipeline, like the Export-Import Bank, which drives me crazy, as you know, like what we can do to get Americans back to work. So it was exciting, and it was interesting, and it gave me an insight into, I think, the administration and the administration's priorities.
We've already sort of talked about the way this became very political, and that Canada's going to, the oil's coming out of the ground. It either goes west to Asia or it comes south to us, and maybe a pipeline is a safer way of doing it. So we've been over that. What are the chances now that the devil's in the details, and that now it gets bogged down and we take too hard a line with Canada on the terms of the deal? Is that, I mean, it's not a guarantee it's going to get done now anyway, is it?
Well, I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on, the sourcing of the pipe. A lot of that pipe was stockpiled. We think about, 60-40, some coming out of Canada. We don't know what the source of that pipe is. That's going to be an issue. I also think it might be an issue on whether that oil gets exported, which is something we considered. There was a contract with Valero, the refineries in the south central part of our country, which is where we refine the heavy crude, like the crude coming out of Canada. And so it remains to be seen with this lag what the contract relationships are. But obviously, TransCanada is very interested in engaging. They said they're going to reapply. We look forward to that reapplication and look forward to getting American construction workers working again. Yeah, speaking of that, the president, the job number he used yesterday was 28,000. I don't. A couple of years ago, do you remember that someone in the Obama administration actually said it was more like 200? So they actually used that number. Do you remember that? They used 200, yeah. and then others said, well, look at the towns that spring up. Look at the Walmarts. Look at the the coffee shops that spring up, and they say it's more like 100,000. What do you think the real number is for these? I think the real number is the number of people who will be working to put the pipe in the ground. And what we expect is this isn't going to be one crew moving down the line. It's going to be a lot of crews. And so I don't think that it's an exaggeration to talk about over 20,000 jobs actually constructing the pipeline. The disagreement happened on how many of those jobs are permanent. But I think that really ignores the fact that construction jobs, my dad was a construction worker. He built I-29. Then he went up to Newton or up to the north part of our state and built another road. And so you can say, well, I-29 only meant this many jobs, but workers go from these jobs to jobs, and you have to look at it in a conglomeration of what are we doing to build infrastructure and to put these people back to work in critical priorities for the American public. And so I'm a little sensitive when people say this isn't a real job. These guys who work on the pipeline, those are real jobs, and they mean a lot to their families.
Right. It drives me crazy, too, when we hear they're just temporary. It's like, what infrastructure project is permanent? So it's disingenuous. And here's one that, we want public-private partnerships. We don't want all public infrastructure. This was going to be totally private, and they looked a gift horse in the mouth and rejected it.
Well, I couldn't agree more. And what's ironic, look at the backdrop of that, when the president's own Secretary of Energy used his quadrennial report to say, let's not worry about sourcing energy, let's worry about moving energy, let's worry about energy infrastructure. But yet, because of politics, because that's the only reason, if you really understood the record, they denied the application. And I think it was wrong. It was wrong-headed. It played to the keep it in the ground. This isn't going to stay in the ground. Canada has already approved a pipeline going west out of Alberta, out of the oil sands. And so this oil is going to move, and it might as well be accessible to refineries here in this country.
Do you have anyone? Do you have anyone to eat with at lunch anymore? And like when you're in the Senate, I mean, when you go to eat lunch, do you? I am. Are you like alone at the table? You're looking around, waving at some of your colleagues from the East Coast, and they're like, do you have company? I mean,
you know, what I'd like to tell you, Joe, is after this election, last election, they're a little more interested in what I have to say.